I've lived in Buenos Aires for almost 2 years, and I'll share with you what it's like to live in the so-called Paris of Latin America. We'll talk about the noise, transport, food, and safety. So make yourself a nice cup of coffee and settle in. Hi, I'm Angelina. I travel, learn languages, and talk about real life in different places. First things first, let's talk about the noise. The hustle and bustle of Buenos Aires hits you the moment you step outside. Well, it's a big city. Around 3 million people live here. And like any major city, it's busy, noisy, and full of traffic. But honestly, it really depends on the neighborhood. In the center, it's crowded with tourists, packed with cars, beggars, and people who constantly try to get your attention. But if you go to another neighborhood, for example, Belgrano, it's where I live, it feels like a completely different world. I just love those leafy streets where you can walk for hours and drink your coffee. So I wouldn't call Buenos Aires this typical megacity where life feels overwhelming. You just need to know where to go. In my opinion, most of the city is actually chill and calm. Although, if there is a football match, forget about peace and quiet. The whole city turns into a stadium. Food and meal times. This is where cultural gap hits hard. For Argentinians, breakfast isn't really a meal, it's more like a ritual. Usually it's just a coffee and a couple of media lunas, and that's it. They're good to go. Lunch happens at 1 or 2 p.m., but the main event of the day is dinner, and it starts at 8 or even 9 p.m. Dinners here are enormous. It starts with entrada, maybe some bread and sauce, and then the main dish, asado, pasta, or gnocchi. Speaking of which, gnocchi is exactly what I'm eating in this video. They're soft little potato pillows covered in sauce. So delicious. Once my husband and I were staying at a hotel with breakfast included, and local Argentinians were staring at our giant breakfast plates with eggs, bread, media lunas, some vegetables. Yeah, they just couldn't believe that it's possible to eat so much for breakfast. But when we said we didn't feel like having a steak for dinner, they were even more confused. Still, Argentine food is delicious, and I know for sure I will miss it a lot when we leave. Now, let's talk about transport. Buenos Aires has a great system. Tons of buses, the subway, a lot of taxis, everything you need. At first, we were kind of nervous to use public transport. We'd heard stories about pickpockets on buses. But eventually, we got over it and started using buses and the subway. And honestly, it's amazing. The buses are actually great. In summer, the AC works, there are no conductors yelling at you. People wait in line, and they're super respectful to each other. You pay with a Sube card. It's really easy to use, and it works in other cities too, which is very handy. Sometimes, of course, we're too lazy to go to the bus stop, and in these cases, we use taxi. The most popular apps here are Didi and Uber. Okay, it's time to talk about safety. I've already mentioned pickpockets on buses, and in fact, that's a real thing here. Theft happens everywhere, in transport and taxi. Yeah, someone can open your door at a red light and simply grab your phone, on the street, or even when you're having lunch outside. Also, it might happen from a motorbike. Someone rides up, snatches your phone or bag, and vanishes in 2 seconds. So we just stick to the basics, like don't wave your phone around, keep your bag close, and just don't leave your things on the bench in the park. Well, honestly, these are just quick petty thefts. People, in fact, are hardly ever physically hurt. Usually it's just a material loss. Armed robberies and violent crime is way less common here than in post-Soviet countries, where I'm from actually, if you haven't noticed from my accent. And personally, I would rather lose my phone than face a violent situation. And lastly, I also want to talk about safety. But as a woman, I lived 24 years in a country where if someone harasses you in the street, nothing really happens. And the creepy guys know that and take full advantage. Every single one of my female friends has a story of being grabbed, followed, catcalled, or something even worse. At first, here in Argentina, I was always on guard. It was just how I was used to feeling. But after a while, I noticed that things felt different here. Sure, you might get an unwanted look or an awkward comment about your appearance from a stranger in the street, but it's way less frequent here, and I would say it's more of an exception. And here's the thing, it's not just about cultural attitude. It's not that all Argentinians are saints, though I wish. The truth is, the police actually take women seriously here, especially in cases of harassment and stalking. When a woman files a report, she gets support from a psychologist, and there's no pressure or gaslighting. People genuinely try to help her. And if the threat continues, she gets a little emergency device. If the guy shows up, she presses the panic button, and the police come immediately. When I first heard about it from my friend who went through this, I was just shocked. Like, wait, what? They really protect women here? Wow, I didn't know it could be like this. Amazing. For the first time in my life, I felt safe as a woman. That was just a little glimpse of my life in Buenos Aires. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, feel free to stick around for more. See you soon!